Welcome to the Spunky Spirit Podcast. I'm your host, psychic medium Carrie Muggs. This is where we learn all things spirit, everything from spiritual gifts, awakenings, ghosts, aliens, and starseeds. Nothing is untouchable, but always fun and spunky. I am honored to be on this spiritual journey with you, so make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Hello, this is Carrie Muggs, and I'm going to talk to you today about mediumship. What exactly is mediumship? So I am a psychic medium, and so I'm going to kind of tell you a little bit of things, how it works for me, or how it works just from my example or from my experience. So there might be some things that I talk about, like the history, that other people might have some different experiences on, but I just can teach from my experience. But the thing I love about these podcasts is we can go through this and learn together, and that's what I love, and that's my main objective on these podcasts, is to teach you from what I experienced, but also to go down lanes that I don't know, and we can learn together and decide together what we believe in. So, mediumship. Now, probably some of you have seen some mediums. There's John Edwards, there's the Von Pra guy, I don't know his last name, Teresa Caputo, Tyler Henry, and there's just so many. Well, there's not so many, but there are a lot, and they all kind of do different things. So some of them do connect to your loved ones, and some of them do paranormal activity things, or they still connect to your loved ones. There's just a variety of things. Now, I believe that everybody has the gift of mediumship. I do. I believe everybody has it, just like everybody can play golf. We're all born with spiritual gifts, and some spiritual gifts we have more than others. So we all have the spiritual gifts, but some of our gifts are stronger than others. So kind of like we all are born, and some of us just have a natural knack for playing golf, but some of us can practice and put it into practice, and we can play a pretty good game of golf too. I believe that that's what mediumship is. I believe that you can have a pretty good knack of it from when you're born, and I also believe you can practice it and get better at it and become really good at it. I do know that I have had it since I was 5, and I have practiced it for a really long time. I've been doing readings for 15 plus years, and so the more readings I did, the better I got. Some of the first readings I did, I go back and think, oh my gosh. But it's because you have to practice. It's just something you have to practice and you have to learn. And also, too, when I was littler, when I would see the spirits, or when I would be able to see spirits, I wasn't able to communicate with them very well because I didn't know how it worked. I didn't know they talked in signs and symbols. And so a lot of times they would just automatically be scary, automatically be fear and scary, even if they were good or bad, because I didn't really know what was going on. So I just feel like it's a practice. It takes time. And towards the end, I'll kind of give you an idea of how they speak to you, or how you can practice it, and kind of how to watch for. But this is going to be kind of a cool episode to kind of explain how it is and how it works. So now, with definition of mediumship, it's a process or a practice that to be a human instrument or tool for spirits to communicate to. So I have to replay this all the time to my clients. I'm just a tool. So what they show me, or things that come through in readings, they're just showing me because I'm just a tool. I'm just like a medium or a channel for them to be able to, because I know how to interpret it, and I've been doing it for a long time. Do you always need a medium to connect to your loved ones? No. They can come through to you in their own ways and signs and symbols. What happens is we think that it was a coincidence, or we think that we're crazy. And most of the time we're not. Most of the time it is a spirit that's trying to connect to us, and we're not aware of it, or we don't see it. Not by any fault of your own. You just don't know. You just don't know we're never taught how to communicate with spirit. So just know that the gift of mediumship, or the mediumship, is just a tool, or just someone who can actually communicate with them. So we all can see signs and symbols and feel spirits, but to actually learn and communicate with them, it's like learning a language. So that's kind of what mediumship is. Now, a lot of people are, called psychic mediums. And here's why. There is a difference between mediumship and psychicness. So psychicness is like you just know things, you know the future, you can just feel people. Psychic is when you can read people. So when you're next to somebody and you just have this feeling, or you just know something, or you see in your mind's eye different things that they've done, that is psychicness. You read people's energy. Now, mediumship is when you read a spirit's energy. So that's what mediumship is. They can read the spirit's energy, the spirits that come through. They can do that with a spirit, not just a person. Now, all mediums are psychic. That means all mediums can do both, read people and read spirits. But not all psychics are mediums. So some psychics just can read people and not actually read energy or energy spirits in the energy. Now, psychic doesn't mean that you can see the future. Psychic means that you can see things and read people, or you can sometimes see the future, but you can sometimes see people's past. You're just reading energy. So psychic can be like, I forgot what it's called, but I'll bring it up another time, and it's probably in a past reading. When you hold an object and you feel it, and that's psychic abilities. And when the government sometimes has these things, gosh, I need to practice more. I need to get updated on my things. It's called psychic. I'll get the name for it, but it's like a way that the government has you tap into different, they have you trained that you can tap into other places across the world, or so you can sit down. It's something visualized. I'll figure out what it is later, but it's something that you visualize clear across the United States, or you look and see a different place or a different place somewhere else. I will write what that is in the show notes, because I don't know what it is and I can't find it. So I'll write what that's actually called, and that's actually real. Like the government has people, psychics, that will sit down and they'll try and have them explain somewhere else that they're not at, like a different place. And they have people trained to do this, and people can sit down and see places clear across the country, clear across the United States, different places where they're not at. It's really, really cool. And I'm going to read more into that. I'll probably do a podcast on it one day, but I'll put what it's called in the notes. So now we're going to kind of talk about the history of mediumship, because that's gonna bug me until I know what that name is. So we'll move on, do the history of mediumship. So now mediumship began clear back, all through history. There's been, the Greeks had oracles, and not only the Greeks, but like the Romans, there was always oracles. They've always used runes. They've always used tea leaves, things like that. They've just used different modalities. So, but the very first kind of one that they were talking about, or I kind of fell upon, is called Helen Duncan. So it really started early in England, or in, I guess she was from Scotland, but in the United Kingdom, that's where it was pretty big, where it first started. But there's a lady called Helen Duncan, and she was one of the very first practicing mediums. And she actually got arrested in 1735 under the Witchcraft Act. So she would use things like, she would do some crazy things. And sometimes some people still say that it was fraud, but she would try and prove that the spirit was real. And this is kind of how ectoplasm was discovered. So one time when they were doing a seance, some policemen came in and kind of went in and raided the place, and there was residue, ectoplasm residue from the spirits that had been there. So this is kind of where Ghostbusters gets its slime. That's where it came from, because of the ectoplasm. So some people, this is not, ectoplasm is not scientifically proven, but it's actually kind of cool because there was kind of, some of the policemen there did say there was some ectoplasm left over by the spirits, or some molding left over by the spirits. That's called ectoplasm. She also did this type of pictures where she would try and take pictures of the spirits that came through, and she also did some sort of like mold, face mold of it. And somebody said, when I was reading about it, that somebody said that was fraud. But you just never know, because everybody's trying to prove, you just don't, this is something that science and spirit just hasn't come together on. And so they don't really have the proof, and that's why it's so hard. But I kind of think it's cool. But it's just ectoplasm. She just tried to materialize the spirit somehow so she could prove it more. She did get arrested a lot, and she did actually, they had a witchcraft act back then that you could get arrested for, and so she was always going from place to place. So I thought that was kind of cool to learn from. The next one that I learned is the 1848. I think these guys were kind of the first ones in the United States. They were the Fox sisters. So when they were little, they moved into a new house, and the girls were starting to knock on the walls, or starting to rap on the walls, and they would get a knock back. And so they started to kind of communicate with this knock. So they would knock and say, okay, I'm going to snap my fingers and you follow the repetition. And she'd snap her fingers and the knocks would follow that repetition. So then they started to ask questions to the spirit. And the spirit would say yes, I think 2 for yes and 1 for no. They'd ask it a bunch of questions, and the spirit would knock 1 or knock 2, just whenever the questions were. And they started to grow pretty big, the Fox sisters did. In fact, so big that it started to be kind of hard and they couldn't go anywhere. They got pretty popular. And so one of the sisters finally kind of decided they were getting lots of, just kind of like negative stuff, plus the positive and the negative stuff. So they finally decided, one of the sisters came out and said it was all a hoax, it was fake. But in reality, they later did find that there had been a peddler that had gone to the house before the sisters moved in, and he was murdered and he was trapped in the wall. And I think that the neighbors were convinced that someone had been murdered in the house, and they'd asked the spirit about it, and they did kind of find that there was a murder in the house. I'm pretty sure they did find it. There was a man, let me check just a sec. Finally, they found a man in the name of Bell, and they said that this poor innocent man had committed murder in the house, and that the noises had come from the spirit of the murdered person. And so Bell was shunned and looked upon by the whole community as a murderer. So I don't know. That's kind of how this mediumship thing all started, and that's kind of how it all kind of came to pass. And then it just kind of started escalating since then, of people being able to talk to spirits. And you'd see, I just found a definition of ectoplasm. Ectoplasm is the outer, relatively rigid, granule-free layer of the cytoplasm, usually held to be a gel, reversibly convertible to a soul. So, yeah, that's ectoplasm. So it's just kind of awesome. Like, I just love the history of it and kind of the backstory of some of it because I'm a medium. And so, of course, I'm going to, want to see where it all comes from. But honestly, I think that it's just an awesome kind of way to connect to spirit and to hear spirit. And I think that everybody can do it. There was also another one of my favorite mediums was Edgar Casey. He was a clairvoyant. He really struggled. He was known as a sleeping prophet. He really struggled with his religious beliefs and his mediumship capabilities because, of course, this is kind of like what I went through too. You're kind of taught that it's evil, or some people think it's evil, and so you think that it is because there are places in the Bible that, that say that it's not a good thing, or that people interpret it as that. So, and I don't believe that that's true. I don't believe that I think this is a very spiritual, awesome gift to have. And I was 5 when I first had it, and I just really don't feel like God would give this if it was evil to a 5-year-old. So anyways, Casey would sleep. He would fall asleep, and he would be asked questions, all different sort of questions about past lives, Egypt, how we were created, all that kind of stuff. And these would exhaust him. Even though he was asleep when he would do it, it would still very much exhaust him. And so he could only do so many, because he also thinks that it ages you faster. He also felt like it aged him faster. The more readings that he did, it kind of aged him faster. So that kind of is proof that, this kind of spiritual work is kind of exhausting to some. I know that some mediums don't think that it is, but to me and to the majority of mediums that I've come in contact with or read about have said that it's been pretty exhausting. So there are different types of mediumships too. So there's not just one way that people connect to spirit. They're called different types. So the first one is called physical. The physical type of physical mediumship. This is where you get the ectoplasm. This is where you get all the things that you kind of see, like and this is when everybody at the same time can see it or hear it. So it's not just one person. It's not just a medium. It's like everybody has that spiritual experience at once. So everybody sees the ghost. Everybody sees the ectoplasm. Everybody hears the spirit. So this is physical. This is physical mediumship. And this is just like when everybody together collectively can hear or see a spirit. The ectoplasm counted as it, and when Helen did her masks, that was counted. So just kind of that's like if you're doing a seance, and everybody has the same experience. That's what physical mediumship is. Mental mediumship is working through the mind, when the spirits talk to you through your mind. So this is what most of mediums are today, is mental mediumship. And it's not just the mind. That's what we'll talk about later too, is the different clairs. So, because that's how you can talk to spirit, or that's how you can talk to spirits that come through. Also, there's channeling. Now, this is different. This is like, I don't know if you've ever seen Ghost, but in the beginning, Whoopi Goldberg is doing a reading. That's not the type of reading that I do, but she was doing a reading and talking to people's ancestors, so-called, but it was kind of fraudulent. And then he comes in, I don't know, I think his name was Sam, I'm not sure. He comes in and she can hear him. This is like the mental mediumship. Now, channeling is when he uses her body at the end. So when he's saying goodbye to her and he kind of takes over her body, it's not like a possession. It's not like you don't have control. It's just spirits kind of use your body or speak through your body and use your body to get their messages across. It's kind of like the ending time when he went into Whoopi's body and talked to Demi Moore through that way. So that's kind of what channeling is. Lots of books are written through channeling, lots of different types of channeling. So like if you're anything with Abraham Hicks, they channel Abraham. Yes. So Esther Hicks will channel Abraham, and she writes lots of books about that. And there's just other people that channel different spirits, channel different things, and they write books about it. So that's what channeling is. Now, automatic writing, I've talked about this before on my Instagram. That's when you just kind of start writing, and spirits can speak to you through your clairs, and you start writing what they're talking about. Now, this first happened to me when my grandfather passed away, and he kept saying, write your grandma a letter, write your grandma a letter. And so I sat down on the back porch on his swing, and I started writing a letter. And in that letter, he started to talk about things I would never know about. And so that was my first experience with automatic writing. I didn't even know what automatic writing was about then. But that was my first experience, and it was kind of cool because there was just things in that letter that I didn't know about the sisters or about my aunts. And So that's kind of what automatic writing is, and that's for part of mediumship. Then there's evidential. Now, this is what I claim to be. This is what I am as an evidential medium. This is when spirits bring forth information that is undeniably true. That is, that there's no way I would ever know this. And I give things like things that you've done in the last 24, 48 hours, or things that you've done recently, or how they passed, things that I would never in a million years know, things that you can't Google, things that you can't research. And this is where people are called evidential mediums, and I'm super big on this. I'm super big on having evidence. Sometimes I'm so big on the evidence that I forget about the message, because I just want the evidence so badly, and I need to work on this. And so most of the time, some of my readings are just all evidence. But sometimes the spirits will be like, hey, I need you to really share the message, because I really want them to know we love them. So that's what evidential mediumship is. And that's what I am. I'm an evidential medium. So now, Edgar Casey, he was more clairvoyant, and they say he channeled his higher self. So, and I don't know about Helen Duncan. I don't think she might have done some channeling, and she did a lot of physical because everybody saw it. And also with the sisters, the Fox sisters, that was more physical too, because everybody actually heard the knocking sounds, right? So that would be more physical mediumship. So how do you do this? I just feel like I'm going to say a little bit more about mediumship before we go into how you can do it, or how you can practice. Mediumship is, I didn't know that's what I had when I was little. I just knew I could see spirits. I thought everyone could. I didn't know it was not normal until I knew it started bothering people around me. And so in high school, I would drink a lot of alcohol to kind of numb it, because for some reason, for me anyways, when I drank a lot of alcohol, it would just kind of numb. I couldn't hear or see the spirits as much, and I couldn't feel them as much. So that's why I honestly feel like my dad actually had some of this gift too, and he just didn't know it, and he was a severe alcoholic. And I think it's because he had this gift too, and he just didn't realize that that's what was going on. Because here's the thing, if you don't train yourself, or you don't know what it is, you can't really control it, and you don't have any boundaries. And so when I was little, or growing up in high school, I didn't know you could control it. I didn't know you could say, leave me alone. I thought it was just something that happened, and it was beyond my control, and I couldn't really control it. So the only way I could control it is to drink. And then later, once I started, trying to stop it and trying to not step into my power, and I was starting to have migraines, then I started to learn that I can control this, and I can have boundaries, and spirits are like people. And just like people, there's people with good intentions and people with bad intentions. And spirits are the same way. And so I kind of learned that I could have boundaries, and I could tell them to leave me alone. And that was so big for me. Then I could start to communicate with them and kind of understand what they were saying. Because a lot of the things is, a lot of people think they're mediums and they see spirits, they just don't know how to communicate with them. And so that's kind of a process. And you can have your own little language with them. So I know that some mediums have different signs and symbols for different things. I have different, and so I do too. I have different signs and symbols. I know that, like, maybe Lisa Williams, who I've trained with, she's from the UK, she sees a rose and as an anniversary. That's not an anniversary for me. I see like a candle or a cake for an anniversary, and for birthdays I see balloons. So every medium has a different sign or symbol. Now sometimes signs and symbols come through and I won't know what it is, and I'll say straight out, do you understand what this is? Because most of the time the people I'm giving a reading to completely understand what that sign or symbol means and what it means to them. So it just depends. Just like one time, and I use this all the time, and probably my students and my clients probably get so sick of this, but I saw a cinnamon bear, and I said, do you understand the cinnamon bear? And she said, well, I ate a whole bag of cinnamon bears on the way over here because I was so nervous. And I love that because that's something you can't research, that you can't Google. That evidence is my favorite, because I love it that they know what you're doing and they are letting you know that they're with you. So they knew she was nervous coming over. They knew that she was on her way over, and so they referenced and gave evidence that they were with her. So that's kind of my take. Now, I do believe, like I said, everybody has this gift. Now, how can you tap in? Now, I gave a podcast a while ago on the clairs. There's different ways each of us talk to spirit. Now, there's 4 main ways. There's actually more than 4 clairs, but there's 4 main clairs that you use. And one is clairaudient, which is hearing. One is claircognizance, which is just knowing. One is clairvoyance, which is seeing, like dreams or visions or seeing with your third eye. And one is clairsentience, which is feeling, which is empaths and people who take on other people's feelings. Now, the trick is mediums have to use all 4 of these clairs all the time. So they have to have all 4 of these clairs working about the same. You can still have stronger ones. My stronger is clairsentience, claircognizance, but when I was little, I had a lot of clairvoyance. I saw a lot of things. So, but right now you have 1 or 2 that are your main clairs that you use all the time. So you have to ask yourself which one it is. So when you watch a movie, are you a mess because you feel all the feelings during the movie? If so, that would be clairsentient. If you love the sounds or if you love the music, mostly music people and people who love the sounds, those are the clairaudient ones. Those are the ones who can actually hear. So if you've ever had those moments where you're kind of laying in bed and you hear someone say your name, that's probably because you're clairaudient. That's a clairaudient. Claircognizance is just when you're watching a movie and you already know what's going to happen. You kind of just know this is what's going to happen. This is why my husband hates watching movies with me. And I don't like to watch movies either because I just kind of know who the killer's going to be or who's going to, how it's going to play out. So this is my claircognizance people. Now, clairvoyant is when you see the movie and you love the visuals, you love the costumes, you love the scenery, you love the vision part of it. Those are my clairvoyant. So you need to figure out which one is your strongest one. How do you hear spirit most of the time? Do you dream a lot? Do you just hear voices? Do you just know stuff? Do you feel things? And so once you figure out what your strongest clair is, then you can start practicing it and start testing it. So like if you're clairvoyant, you can do those little things with cards. You can take 3 cards out of a deck and that's kind of more psychic practice, but still practice is practice and you can do intuitively practice. Now to actually talk to a spirit, if you have a lost loved one or you have your guides, you can say, okay, if you think you're more clairvoyant, you can say, okay, I want to see this. I want to see an owl within 3 days. Start playing this game with them and they'll start showing up and you will start to just be amazed at the stuff you start seeing. And they love it too, because here's the thing. You have to remember, if you were to pass over today, what would you want to do? You would want to be with your family. Of course, you'd want to still progress. Of course, you'd still want to raise your frequency, but you'd also want to you'd also want to be with your family. So if you found out if you realized that your family members could be on your frequency and they could start communicating with you, you would be so excited. Oh, whoops. Well, that was a mistake. Sorry about that. You would be so excited and you would love it. So this is what your ancestors will do. Once you start communicating with them, they will start doing it more and doing it more. You just have to figure out what clair is your strongest and then start using that and start having conversations with a past loved one. Now, also too, don't feel like you're crazy or don't feel like if you do, and don't expect the answer to come through in your own way. So if you're like, okay, I need you to show me a butterfly, and it's January 1st and there's no butterflies, that's going to be really hard for them to come through. And it's maybe you go to the doctor and there's a big picture of butterflies in front of you and you're like, well, that's not what I wanted. I wanted a real butterfly. Well, that's not going to always happen. Spirit doesn't always come through the way you want them to. Spirits come through the way they know how. They have to divinely guide. They have to divinely make it work. They have to go behind the scenes and make it work in the timing. So that's why you also have to give them a little bit of time. And some mediums, I've never heard this, but some mediums think that they need to ask for permission before they do it. I've never heard that, and I've never experienced that, but you never know. I don't know. And some people think that so sometimes when I do readings, some people think that they have to have permission to come through. I've never heard that, but I do know that there's some mediums that say that they do, and I don't know. We learn together, right? You take and decide what you want to do that. I do know that when they go to the other side, they process things and they have a life review and they're always raising their frequency and they're always learning and growing. So sometimes they always can't come through, and sometimes they might be a little quieter than other times. But just know they're a frequency. They're like a radio station. So when you ask questions or you talk to them, they can hear you. No matter what they're doing, they can always hear you. That's why people say they're just a thought away. So sometimes you might feel them a lot closer, or you might be able to communicate with them a lot better than other times. Don't feel like this is anything you're doing wrong, because they also are processing and moving frequencies and moving up on the other side, on the other side too, okay? And I have to admit, sometimes when I do readings, some spirits are harder to hear than other spirits, and probably this is probably the reason why. If they were kind of quiet on Earth, they're going to be kind of quiet when they come through in the reading. So that's kind of how you practice. Now, if you don't know what the clairs are, there is a podcast, I don't know what episode, I think it's one of the beginning ones, that talks about the clairs. And it goes more into depth about the clairs, and you can also Google the clairs, and you can decide which one is your most dominant clair and start to use that. Now, once you start using that most dominant clair, then you can practice using others, because as mediums, sometimes spirits will come through and they'll use all 4 of your clairs all at the same time. And so mediums probably have to have, I don't know, in my experience, I have to be able to use all of my clairs all the time. And so, because sometimes they'll even do smells. And I know that there's a clair factory, something, it's for smells. So, and I'll smell different smells too that they'll come through and give me as evidence. So that is kind of mediumship in a whole. That's what it is. It's just kind of all grown. It's kind of cool. I love it because I am one, but it took me a long time to figure it out and to play with it and to know. Now, I think everybody can see spirits. I think everybody has probably had an experience seeing spirits. But sometimes I think people can feel spirits, hear spirits, and they just don't know that that's what's happening. So this is kind of a mediumship. So, and all a medium is a tool for spirit to talk through. So it's kind of like a microphone. Like I'm a microphone, and because I am really good at it, it's just like golf. I'm really good at playing mediumship. Then people come to me and learn and communicate with their loved ones, and that's what a medium is a tool that spirits use to connect to their loved ones. Now, can people connect to their loved ones without a medium? Yes, they can. And if you follow my Instagram or my Facebook group, I leave tips and hints all the time on how to be able to hear your loved ones. So if you want to follow me on Instagram, my name it's at Carrie Muggs on Insta. Also, I have an awesome Facebook group that I use that we talk about the podcast. We talk about all these things. We talk about the glares. We talk about everything spiritual, and we talk about awakenings, and we talk about moons and full moons and all the things. So if you want to go to that Facebook group, I'll leave a link in the show notes. And also, too, if you want to sign up for my newsletter, please go to my website at carriemugs.com and sign up to get my monthly newsletter. I promise you will only get 1 or 2 newsletters a month. I do not give that information out to anybody, and I don't spam you. I just kind of tell you what's coming up and the different podcasts that we have and the different classes that I'm doing. And I kind of give spiritual tips in it, too. So this might be one, how to connect to your loved ones more. Also, too, I do have an awakening course that is available on my website. It kind of helps you go through the awakening. It talks about the clairs. It talks about your spirit guides. It talks about protection that you use to surround yourself. It talks about the signs and symbols and how to communicate with spirit. It has eight different subjects. I can't remember all of them that they talk about, and helps you to open up to spiritual connective and open up to be able to connect better. So if you're interested in that, that is also on my website. So I love you guys. I hope that helps. I hope that gives you a better idea of what mediumship is. And, if you have a mediumship reading or a medium, a reading, just go ahead and relax. I've been doing mediumship readings forever, and I still get nervous just because they're sacred, and I want them I want to do a good job. That's why I get nervous. But I know you might get nervous. A lot of people say that their biggest concern is that no one's going to come through. I've never had that happen. Never. I've never had somebody come through and haven't been like, nobody's here. So just know that's very, very rare. It could be that the medium at the time doesn't connect very well, and that, I've had days where I've connected better than others, but most of the time the connection's pretty good once you start the connection. But I have had spirits that are harder to communicate with than others. But I'll say straight out, I'm having a hard time connecting, and if I don't think it's at a spot where I am connecting very well, then we'll reschedule. But that's never happened either. But sometimes give the medium some grace if that happens, okay? And also too, when you go in with an open mind, because it's not going to come through detailed. It's not the reading is not going to come through like, hi, my name is George. I was born in 1950. It doesn't come through. It doesn't come through like that. It comes through with signs and symbols. And the medium is interpreting these signs and symbols, and interpretation is key. And there's always room for misinterpretation. So just know that that's kind of why, mediums kind of will just say, this is what I'm seeing, because you might have a different interpretation of a sunflower than what the medium has as a sunflower. So just remember that. And also too, just give yourself some grace, try and relax, and know that the medium's just doing their best too. Always when you look for a medium, look for, the couple things to watch out for is if they tell you you are cursed, don't go fall for that. don't. And if they say the only way you can break the curse is to pay money, don't do that. Also to remember that no medium is ever 100% accurate. There's always an 80-90%, 70-80. Even the best mediums are never 100% accurate. So just know that too. And just go in with an open mind and an open heart, and know that all three parties, the medium, you, and the spirits, are just doing their best. They're just all trying to communicate in this dense area of this frequency. So love you guys so much, and I hope that helps. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them on my Facebook page at Spunky Spirit, or you can come to the face. Sorry, you can ask to be. It's a private group. The Facebook group is, but you can answer the questions and ask to join. It's mostly people who listen to the podcast. So hope to see you guys there, and I will talk to you later.